igniting the atmosphere and setting the tone for She Shakti 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause. Atulam tatra tattejah sarvadeva sharirajam ekasthanam tadbhunnari vyapta lokatrayam tvisha. The unmatched radiance born from all divine powers shines vividly here, concentrated in the women around us, women who have not only faced the fiercest storms, but have also crafted the ships, charted the courses, and guided entire fleets safely to their destined shores. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lions International presents News 18 She Shakti 2025 in association with M3M Foundation and Reliance Industries Limited in New Delhi. This year's theme, From Breaking Barriers to Building Bharat, marks a vital shift from seeking belonging to owning space with confidence. Indian women are gaining global recognition across sectors, creating opportunities, driving innovation, and shaping a future defined by their vision. She Shakti 2025 holds a special significance as for the first time we took this prestigious platform to Mumbai for a regional chapter featuring powerful voices like Shri Devendra Fadnavis, Ashwini Bide, Dr. Neerja Birla, and Renuka Shahane. Over the years, She Shakti has hosted inspiring leaders including Honorable President Srimati Droupadi Murmu, former Vice President Shri Jagdeep Dhankar, former CGI Shri D.Y. Chandrachud, legendary singers Asha Bhosle and Usha Uthup, and scientists like Dr. Tessie Thomas, to name a few. And none of this would have been possible without our partners. A heartfelt thank you to the presenting partner, Lions International, associate partners, M3M Foundation and Reliance Industries Limited, for standing with us and for believing in what happens when women lead. So as we begin today, remember, the barriers are no longer the story. What women are building now is. And here at News 18 She Shakti 2025, you'll witness that blueprint unfold today. Since the very inception of She Shakti, there has been one unwavering champion whose leadership and vision have inspired countless women across the nation. A true beacon of strength and empowerment, she has continuously stood for the cause of women's progress and nation building. It is now our distinct honor to present a special message from this remarkable leader. Please turn your attention to the screen for a video message from our Honorable President of India, Srimati Droupadi Murmu. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause, please.
नमस्कार। वर्ष 2023 में महिला सशक्तिकरण पर केंद्रित शी शक्ति कार्यक्रम के शुभारंभ का अवसर मुझे मिला था। मुझे ये जानकर प्रसन्नता हुई है कि इस कार्यक्रम की प्रतिष्ठा बढ़ रही है। इस कार्यक्रम की सार्थकता इसलिए बढ़ जाती है कि ये केवल कुछ गिनी चुनी महिलाओं की उपलब्धियों को सामने लाने का उत्सव नहीं है, बल्कि संपूर्ण नारी जाति की असीम क्षमताओं को उजागर करने का महत्वपूर्ण प्रयास है। भारतीय संस्कृति में महिलाओं को शक्ति का साक्षात स्वरूप माना गया है, श्रद्धेय माना गया है। श्रद्धा स्वरूपा नारी की अधिक से अधिक मान्यता देने तथा बड़े से बड़ा उत्तरदायित्व देने की सोच के साथ आज हमारा देश आगे बढ़ रहा है। वैज्ञानिक, इंजीनियर, डॉक्टर, सैनिक, कलाकार, उद्यमी, खिलाड़ी, शिक्षाविद, समाजसेवी, नीति निर्माता तथा अनेक अन्य भूमिकाओं में महिलाएं नित नई शिखर हासिल कर रही है। वे अब अवसर दिए जाने का इंतजार नहीं कर रही है, वे स्वयं ही आगे बढ़ रही है तथा दृढ़ विश्वास के साथ नेतृत्व प्रदान कर रही है। मुझे ये कहते हुए गर्व हो रहा है कि महिला केंद्रित बदलाव के प्रति भारत की दृष्टि स्पष्ट है और प्रतिबद्धता अटूट है। वास्तव में ये केवल बदलाव नहीं है, बल्कि क्रांति है। लखपति दीदी योजना से लेकर नारी शक्ति बंधन अधिनियम जैसे अनेक दूरदर्शी परिवर्तन के बल पर हमारे देश में महिला सशक्तिकरण की यात्रा बहुत आगे पहुंच गई है। महिला नेतृत्व द्वारा विकास की सोच अब नीतिगत और संस्थागत प्रवाह का रूप ले चुकी है। मुझे खुशी है कि स्त्री शक्ति कार्यक्रम के माध्यम से एक ऐसा प्रभावी मंच विकसित हो रहा है जिस पर एक और उपलब्धियों का उत्सव मनाया जा रहा है तो दूसरी ओर परिवर्तन को नई ऊर्जा प्रदान की जा रही है। इसके लिए मैं न्यूज 18 नेटवर्क की सराहना करती हूँ। मुझे बताया गया है कि इस कार्यक्रम की यात्रा का उद्देश्य महिलाओं का सम्मान करने तक ही सीमित नहीं है, ये सर्वसमावेशी भारत के निर्माण की दिशा में आगे बढ़ने का प्रस्थान बिंदु है। मुझे विश्वास है कि आप सब महिला सशक्तिकरण की अनवरत यात्रा में अडिग प्रतिबद्धता और अदम्य साहस के साथ आगे बढ़ते रहेंगे। आप सब एक ऐसे राष्ट्र के निर्माण में भागीदारी करेंगे जहां प्रत्येक महिला की पुकार को सुना जाएगा, उसे रोकने वाली हर बाधा को ध्वस्त किया जाएगा और इसके सभी सपने साकार होंगे। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
Thank you, Honorable President Srimati Droupadi Murmu ji, for your deeply inspiring words. Your vision reminds us why She Shakti exists, not just to celebrate women, but to amplify their power to shape our nation's future. Before we move ahead, did you know that the first Lions Club in India was established in 1956? Since then, they've set up 158 schools, 45 blood banks, 46 dialysis centers, 200 eye hospitals, general hospitals, and even community kitchens. Please give a big round of applause to Lions International for their selfless work. We shift gears to a session that brings together power, protocol, and global perspective. In today's interconnected world, diplomacy is more than just protocols and formalities. It's about building bridges, forging trust, and redefining leadership on a global scale. As women take their place at the helm of international relations, their unique perspective brings empathy, agility, and fresh thinking to every challenge that arises. To help decode this perspective, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Palki Sharma. And now, it is also my privilege to invite upon Lindy Cameron, British High Commissioner to India, also a trailblazer, whose work exemplifies the transformative power of women in diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome her with a huge round of applause.
Good morning. Namaskar to all of you. It's wonderful to see so many of you gathered here this morning to lend your support to a cause that is very close to our hearts, She Shakti. With me is the British High Commissioner to India, who's not only shaping the future of India-UK ties, but also representing women in a field that is traditionally dominated by men. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Her Excellency, Lindy Cameron. Good morning.
Morning, Palki. It's wonderful to be here.
Welcome to She Shakti, and thank you for making time for this. You've had a long and diverse career as a diplomat, and as Akanksha said, that the world is changing, and women are bringing their unique perspective. But back when you started, the world was very different. What is it that drew you towards diplomacy, and what is it that keeps you going when you face challenges, which I'm sure you face many of?
Thank you so much. The truth is, I'm actually a bit of an accidental diplomat. I started my career in the private sector at McKinsey, but I really wanted a career that would allow me to travel the world and to make a difference. So I actually ended up moving from the private sector into government work through working in development. And the early part of my career was largely in DFID, the UK's Department for International Development, trying to make a difference to lives, including women's lives around the world. But I was born in Belfast, and so in many ways I think I was inexorably drawn back to countries in conflict and to trying to tackle some of the most difficult development challenges we faced. So I found myself increasingly working in countries like the Balkans, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, some of the world's hardest places, and that drew me into the wider national security conversation, so I've ended up with a career that has spanned everything from development to national security. If you'd asked me 27 years ago when I joined the government how long I planned to stay, I think it would have been for about 2 years, but frankly, every time I've changed jobs, I've ended up with an even more interesting challenge to face, and this one is probably the biggest of all.
And I'm sure there have been moments in your career when the odds were stacked against you. How did you navigate those, and how did you turn the moment around? Did you at any point feel that this is happening because you're a woman, or did you think that it just comes with the job?
Oh, there have certainly been many moments that I felt that, whether that was walking into a room full of technologists and cyber geeks as the CEO of the National Cybersecurity Centre, a profession actually in many ways started by women, but actually now very dominated by men. Probably the most difficult time was actually when I was the leader of the provincial reconstruction team in Lashkar in Afghanistan, in Helmand province. In many ways, I think people expected that the challenge would be about working in a very rural, very conservative society as a woman. But in fact, my biggest challenge was dealing with some of my coalition military colleagues who were culturally less used to working with women, and particularly less used, I think, to taking direction from younger civilian women. So in a sense, I challenged them on every one of their expectations. And I think part of what you just have to do is have confidence that you are in the room for a reason. In many ways, you get more attention, but you have to make sure your voice is heard. And I would stand firm partly for my team, because my job as a leader was to make sure they got the space to be as brilliant as they were as well. And I had to do it for them as much as for me.
And did you always have the confidence, or did you gain it over time? Because I was a serious case of imposter syndrome, and I meet a lot of women who feel that it's taken them time to own the space.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not sure I know anybody who doesn't have a version of imposter syndrome. I think if they say they don't, then I'm not sure that's true. I mean, when I was growing up, I remember very early debating attempts where I would be almost sick beforehand. I felt it was such a challenge to get on stage, but I didn't want that to put me off, and I didn't want that to keep me out of the room. So I suppose I sort of forced myself to sort of get over some of those barriers. And actually, in many ways, I think the more you do that, the more you begin to enjoy it, and the more you realise that you have a voice that deserves to be heard. So I would say to people out there, go ahead, do the things that scare you, practice a little bit, and I think then you get the adrenaline rush that comes with being able to do things you didn't think you were able to do.
Yeah, I heard someone say that you have to build it like a muscle. It happens over time. But you mentioned Afghanistan. I'm sure in less quote-unquote challenging situations as well. Do you think that women in general, women diplomats, face a higher bar to prove their credibility?
So I was reflecting on this. I'm not sure the bar is higher, but I think you stand out more. So I was joking that not many of my male colleagues face quite the same dilemmas in what they wear every morning as I do, because they don't get quite as much attention when they decide between their blue suit and their grey suit. So I think you stand out, you're more visible. What I've always said to my younger female colleagues is that can be a superpower too. So, when you walk into the room, if you're filled with, if the room is filled with men called Mark and Bob, people will notice you. And actually, therefore, your voice may well get heard more clearly than theirs does. You may well be remembered more. Take advantage of that and use it effectively. So I think sometimes it's not so much a higher bar, but a more visible presence.
Right. Let's talk about the India-UK partnership, and you're working to take it to the next level. They've been called natural partners on more occasion than one. From your experience and from your vantage point, what is it that makes this partnership so unique?
So I think it really is an extraordinary partnership, and I feel very lucky to be here right now, because I think we've just celebrated that extraordinary partnership with the Prime Minister's visit to Chequers, not only to watch our trade ministers signing the comprehensive trade agreement, but also actually to launch the new Vision 2035, which is the vision of what the UK-India partnership can be in the future. I mean, I do think we are natural partners. We have a complicated history. There's no getting around it. But I think that complicated history also brings us many shared cultural reference points. It brings us at least one common language, arguably many more common languages. It brings us reference points, for example, when British universities come to India, of places that people are familiar with, football teams that people know. But also, more importantly, we are the world's sixth and fourth biggest economies. We are two countries that really matter in the global system. And I think we also have a shared tradition of democracy, a shared history of recognising diverse voices that I think gives us an awful lot of empathy for each other's perspectives. So I think that there is a huge amount we have in common. I think there's even more we can do together in the future.
Absolutely. And you mentioned shared language. We have more English speakers in India than in the UK.
Indeed, and I mean, we have an awful lot of Hindi, Gujarati, Marathi, many diverse Indian languages in the UK as well. We're really proud of the nearly 2 million Indians, 2 million people in the UK who have Indian heritage. And I think that's, again, one of our superpowers, is there's a huge connectivity between the people as well, so in many languages.
Where do you see the most exciting opportunities in this partnership going forward?
It's a tough choice. I mean, I think the single most exciting opportunity has to be in terms of what we can do for both the UK and India's growth. The trade deal we just signed will add, I think it's £25 billion to our trade between two countries, 5 to the UK's GDP in the long run. It has massive potential for both economies. I was just talking to some of my business colleagues this morning. There is such excitement out there about what investors in both directions can do. This isn't just about trade. This is about Indian businesses investing in the UK, UK businesses investing in India. So I think we both see the massive potential for both of our economies. I mean, who would not want to be part of a growth story where an economy is growing at 6.5% a year? Who would not want to be part of a market that has 1.4 billion consumers in it? And so I think so many British businesses see India as such an exciting and growing market. But actually also, businesses that come to the UK realise the UK is not their traditional old-fashioned stereotype. I was joking that one of my Indian government colleagues got out of the train at Cambridge expecting to see the Dreaming Spires and realised he was in the middle of a science park. The UK's economy has really dramatically changed in the last few years, and that focus on innovation and technology is huge. But I think, again, it's not just growth and business, it's also education in particular. I think there is such an exciting potential in terms of helping to be part of India's story of implementing the new education partnership, implementing the opportunities in Gift City. We've got 7 UK universities that already want to be part of that. I was at the opening of the University of Southampton's campus here in Haryana, in fact in Gurugram, only a month or so ago, and there are many more that want to follow. So growth, education, but also actually in areas like defence. And I think there are real opportunities with the Made in India campaign to think about the partnerships between British businesses and Indian businesses in thinking about diversifying India's defence sector, for example.
Right, lots to work on. Britain has also been vocal on issues like climate change, migration, diversity. How do these themes play into your work here in India?
One of the great things about being High Commissioner to India is that almost everything plays into this job. I think there is no issue in which India is not one of the most important voices and players in the world, and I think that is no more true anywhere than it is on climate change. India both sees the consequences in terms of adaptation challenges of climate change that is already happening, but also India's journey and the energy that India will need to grow the economy for Viksit Bharat in 2047 will be part of the story about the future of climate change as well. So the choices that India makes about its energy mix, the policies it sets, will be policies that are existentially important to the world's ability to meet those targets, but also then actually to the consequences that Indians feel in places like Uttarakhand, or Jammu Kashmir, with some of the cloudbursts we've seen, the Sundarbans, where the water level is rising. I think there's no country that sees more clearly both the mitigation and adaptation parts of that journey. So, and again, whether that is climate change, whether that is migration, India, we issue more visas to Indians than anybody else. So, India is a massive part of the story of who comes and goes from the UK. Again, there's no issue in which India doesn't matter these days.
Global power equations are changing, and that's an understatement. There are partnerships that are evolving, but there are some constants as well. How do you see India's position on the global stage and its role as a leader of the global South?
So to be honest, I think India should be more ambitious than that. I think India absolutely is a voice and a leader in the global South, but India is also, perhaps more importantly, a future superpower of tomorrow. So I think that as India evolves, as India grows economically, as it becomes impossible to ignore India, and also given its geographic, geostrategic positioning, I think that India will play an ever more important role. And that's one of the reasons we see the UK-India partnership as so important for the future, because India's voice will be ever stronger, ever more important on the world stage on every issue. I think Indian Prime Ministers of tomorrow, and indeed today, will find there are very few issues in which people don't want to know what India's perspective is, and in which that doesn't influence global issues.
As a diplomat, I mean, in all professions, we've seen how technology has disrupted the way we work and the way we go about our business. Diplomacy has changed too. It has moved out of closed rooms. It has moved to TikTok and Twitter and now Truth Social. How do you deal with that? Do you think that's a good change?
I think it's an inevitable change. I mean, I'm fortunate because I was the CEO of the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, which is our world-leading centre for cybersecurity, and absolutely part of the deep heart of our technology and security ecosystems in the UK. So I was very privileged to learn about technology from many of frankly, the geeks who know more about it than anybody else. I was at the first ever AI summit at Bletchley Park, the home of computing in many ways, where computing was used to break the Enigma codes in the Second World War. And I heard the voices of people who were predicting what was going to happen, actually, frankly, today. You know, when I sort of use ChatGPT, you know, when I look at how to use Copilot in my work, I think one of the really important things is that we use the tools we have to advance our ability as humans, as a network. But some of this is not new. One of my good friends in the Foreign Office is a man called Tom Fletcher, who's now actually the Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs at the UN, and he wrote a book called The Naked Diplomat, I think probably 10 years ago now, talking about the shift in diplomacy and the need to communicate to a wider audience. So, a bigger part of my job now is talking to people like you, to audiences like this, than perhaps it might have been for my predecessors 25 or maybe 50 years ago. But I still do think a lot of diplomacy is conducted on the public stage, but actually the quiet rooms still matter. I mean, if you go back to the trade deal we just signed, I'm sure you've heard Piyush Goyal talking about the importance of his vegan chocolate ice cream walk in the park with our trade minister. It's the quiet moments between politicians where many of those critical relationships of trust are built.
As a new crop of leaders, or an old new crop of leaders that prefer spectacle over substance or substantive conversations?
I don't think it's so much about leaders. I think it's more about the audience. I think if you think about the way that all of us consume our news, all of us follow world events, which evolves, year by year, generation by generation, I think that in many ways it challenges all of our leaders to have to think differently about the image they present. One of the big challenges for leaders, I think, is that you are facing both, for every leader, both a national audience and an international audience at the same time. And I think that's something that has completely transformed their jobs.
You mentioned you were in Afghanistan, a conflict zone, and now we have two major wars in Gaza and Ukraine, and many more conflicts. Do you feel that women bring a different dimension to peace building, and do they get enough say?
I think it's a really good question. So do they get enough say? Absolutely not enough. You can never have too much, I think. It is really clear that peace processes that involve women last better, are more resilient. I saw that for myself. I grew up in Northern Ireland, and women played a really important role in the peace process in Northern Ireland in thinking about how it would stick, but also in, frankly, making sure that it happened. Because women also disproportionately pay the price for conflict, whether they are victims of sexual violence, whether they're excluded from the workforce. I think that it's the costs that women bear of conflict, which are extreme, that mean that they are some of the most vocal advocates for peace. And some of the work I'm really proud of that we've done over 25 years of the Women, Peace and Security Initiative is actually to really drive the importance of women's voices in that peace process. We have a real champion now in our gender envoy, Harriet Harman, who is a long-standing voice for the advocate of the voices of women in peace. And I think that it's really important those voices get heard, but it's also really important we keep focusing on the costs and prices that women pay and think about how we can address those issues as well.
Right, and there is a whole movement on feminine foreign policy, and there were reports during the pandemic that countries led by women responded better. So there's something to say for that. But the world often talks about power in terms of hard power, soft power, now increasingly smart power, which is a mix of the two. Do you think that women leaders are redefining power? Is there a different template or a playbook that they use?
So I'm not sure it's about redefining the playbook, and I was very privileged to meet Joseph Nye, who is the architect of many of these terms, and who redefined the concepts that we have. But I think it's more that the space changes when women enter it. So I spent so much of my career, and you probably did too, walking into boardrooms and rooms where I was the only woman in the room, or one of a very small minority.
Expected to nod and smile.
Well, indeed, exactly. I mean, those spaces change when we populate it. When we go in, I know for myself, the conversations are different. The conversations are different when you're the only one. The conversations are different when you have a critical mass. The conversations change again when you're in the majority, and sometimes that now happens, fortunately. So I think we redefine the space, and I think that helps us to change the conversation. I'm not sure there's something very particular and unique, but I think it changes that conversation in space.
The UK has had some very visible women leaders, from Margaret Thatcher to Queen Elizabeth II. How do you think their legacy influences younger women, not just in your country, but otherwise?
I absolutely think their legacy affects people. I think it simply redefines the sense of possibility. I grew up, the first Prime Minister I remember is Margaret Thatcher. She came to power when I was 7 years old. And so I have spent my whole life thinking that it is possible for a woman to be Prime Minister. And we're lucky to be in another country where almost every woman here will also have been, in a country where Indira Gandhi meant that women understood that was a possibility at the highest level. I'm privileged to be the first female High Commissioner of the UK to India, but it's shocking it took us that long. India actually got 3 female High Commissioners to the UK before we managed to get 1 here. So indeed, full credit. But I think it really does matter. I think having role models is absolutely critical to, frankly, not thinking you have to carry that extra burden of being the first one in the role. I think it's just easier not to have to break the glass ceiling. And also it reminds people of the diversity of different female voices. I was privileged early in my career, and I'm privileged again now, to have a leadership team that's majority female. And it reminded me that women have diverse voices. There were five women in my team who were all very different personalities, very different histories and backgrounds. Women are not a single group, in a sense. They are a huge diversity of political perspectives, experience, styles, personalities. And I think the more women we have in the room, the easier it is to define them as unique individuals rather than simply as women.
One of my favorite stories of Margaret Thatcher, I think she was studying chemistry, and then she applied for a job. I remember reading that she was turned down, and the reason that was noted for her being turned down was that she had a mind of her own. Well, she showed she had a mind of her own.
Well, thank you that she got to express it later. I should have said, you referred to our former late Queen Elizabeth II. We refer to her as the UK's best diplomat. I mean, her long history of engaging with, I can't remember how many US presidents, for example, was an absolute triumph of diplomacy over many years. I mean, she was so skilled, such an absolute master of that technique.
Final question. One piece of advice for young women who want to be diplomats and young women who generally want to make something of their careers and themselves.
So I would say, when you look at the room and you don't see enough women in it, don't let that hold you back. Get in there. Go and create the room that you want to see for the people who come after you. So do it not just for yourself and know that you can do it, but also do it for the people who come after you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, High Commissioner Cameron, for reminding us that leadership is not about where you stand, it's about how you pave the way for others who follow. Wonderful talking to you.
Thank you, Ms. Cameron, for sharing your valuable insights and inspiring us with your visionary leadership. And thank you so much, Palki. We now kindly request everyone to please remain seated and avoid stepping out, especially when the sessions are on. Keep your phones on silent, as we have an inspiring conversation coming up on unlocking opportunities, creativity, and empowerment. Let's turn to a conversation that sits at the intersection of creativity, social impact, and even policy, where ideas are not just imagined but turned into real change. From empowering marginalized communities to building cultural institutions and shaping state-level women's rights agendas, our next panel brings together women whose work bridges art, action, and advocacy. To lead this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shivani Gupta, and also joining her on stage is going to be Miss Meera Shenoy, who is the founder at Youth for Jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause for our esteemed guests. Let me also invite upon Richa Agarwal, who's the chairperson at the Kolkata Center for Creativity and also the CEO at Imami Art, Miss Babita Chauhan, who is the president at the Uttar Pradesh State Women's Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome them with a huge round of applause, please. Thank you. Shivani, the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you for the lovely audience for being here. And a big thanks to our guests for being on the podium as well. I'll just very quickly give you a brief understanding of what we're going to be talking about. But we have to acknowledge the fact that on stage with me is almost a decade of experience of working not just with women, but, for example, Meera Shenoy works with the disabled. She's known as the system changer when it comes in the disability space. Richa Agarwal is someone who is recognizing the voices of Bengali artists today and keeping them contemporary. And Babita Chauhan, of course, as a politician, as someone who's been associated with the Lions Club, and now as part of the state's Women Commission, does know a thing or two about what women need, particularly in this age and era. बबीता जी, मैं आप ही के साथ शुरू करना चाहती हूँ. आप बहुत सालों से सोशल वर्क कर रहे हो. आप एक पॉलिटिशियन रहे हो, लायंस क्लब आगरा को आपने फाउंड भी किया है, और अब आप यूपी स्टेट कमीशन के साथ हो. मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाहती हूँ कि इस सदी में क्या दिक्कतें सबसे ज्यादा महिलाएं फेस कर रही हैं आज भी?
देखिए, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. पहले तो मैं आपका बहुत शुक्रिया अदा करती हूँ न्यूज़ 18 का, और सेकंड क्योंकि जब तक स्पॉन्सर अच्छे नहीं होते हैं तो शायद प्रोग्राम करने में भी उतनी आसानी नहीं होती है. इसलिए लायंस क्लब इंटरनेशनल का भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देती हूँ कि जो इतने अच्छे प्रोग्राम करने के लिए और आपका सहयोग कर रहे हैं. तो जैसा आपने कहा कि देखिए, मैं कहती हूँ कि महिलाओं के लिए, अगर महिलाओं की बात की जाए तो इस सदी की बात नहीं, महिलाओं को चैलेंजेस तो हमेशा से फेस करने पड़े ही हैं. लेकिन आज अगर मैं बात कहूँ तो अगर हम महिला सशक्तिकरण की बात करते हैं, और जैसा शी शक्ति आपने नाम दिया हुआ है, तो कहते हैं कि महिला हूँ, कुछ भी कर सकती हूँ, वो है. पर जैसा अगर चैलेंज की बात करूँ तो मैं शायद इस वक्त हम चैलेंज अपने आप से खुद का ही चैलेंज है, क्योंकि एनवायरनमेंट बहुत अच्छा है और मुझे लगता है कि इससे अच्छा मौका कभी महिलाओं को नहीं मिल सकता जो आज है महिलाओं को कुछ भी कर गुजरने का. क्योंकि आज मैं कह सकती हूँ कि महिलाएं आंगन से लेकर अंतरिक्ष तक दौड़ लगा रही हैं. तो मुझे लगता है कि थोड़ी सी अगर समझदारी से काम लें और थोड़ा सा माहौल को समझने की कोशिश करें, अपनी ताकत को पहचानें कि वो क्या अच्छा कर सकती हैं और क्या उनमें कितनी क्षमताएं हैं. जिस दिन वो अपनी क्षमताओं को पहचान लेंगी उस दिन उन्हें दुनिया में कोई रोकने वाला नहीं, और वो बहुत आसानी से आगे बढ़ जाएंगी.
ये बात आप ही नहीं कह रहे हो, ये बात हमेशा एज विमेन हम भी डिस्कस करते हैं कि थोड़ा लैक ऑफ कॉन्फिडेंस होता है. अगर विमेन में खुद ही सबसे ज्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस हो तो शायद उन्हें किसी और चीज की जरूरत ही ना पड़े. रिचा, डू यू अग्री विद दिस दैट एक्चुअली यू मेक योर अपॉर्चुनिटीज, यू मेक योर एनवायरमेंट, एंड इफ विमेन deal with more self-confidence, and there's nothing that can stop them. And is this something that you learn with women artists as well?
Absolutely, but before I start, I'd like to thank all of you for having us over. It really helps to have a platform like this to talk about the women's voices, because as much as we'd like to believe that women are the minority, we're still 50% of the population. So really, do we need someone to come and empower us or to push us? It's all there, it's ours to take, is what all of us believe in. And, just to give you a little example of why and where we started, at my center in Calcutta, we have an installation called Disobedience. जो ये installation है, ये kinetic installation है, तो जब आप उसके through चलते हैं, वो अपने आप खुल जाता है. And we keep telling people walk through it, and the artist calls it disobedience because it didn't obey her. It takes instructions of the person walking through it. But what we have realized and seen over the years, and what really is our driving force, is that वो पहला कदम लेना जरूरी है. आप कदम लीजिए खाली आगे. I mean, women, we create magic day after day. We bring our children up, and my very wise grandmother told me once कि it's only strong women who can bring up strong children. We bring our boys up to be so strong, so why not the girls?
Absolutely. मीरा जी, आपने बहुत सालों तक काम किया है, बहुत सारी गवर्नमेंट्स और कई सैकड़ों कंपनीज के साथ काम किया है. आप डिसेबल्ड लोगों को स्किल करते हैं रूरल अर्बन एरियाज में, सब स्पेसेस में. From your point of view, because you work specially with those who need even more help, if I can put it like that, from your point of view, how far have we come in enabling women in doing what they want to do?
First of all, let me compliment Network 18. I think this recognition is so timely because every time I go anywhere, it's amazing to see these women with a strong voice, whether it's the grassroots, whether it's the startups, all women who say their fathers don't understand what they're doing, but they are obsessed with a good idea. Youth for Jobs, the organization which I've set up, works with young men and women with disabilities to ensure that they come out of poverty, they're independent and they have a voice. And the pathway for us is to give them trainings and livelihoods, whether a job or enterprise. And for this, we work as a system changer with companies, with governments, at the grassroots, in the cities. So I'm going to just talk about an intersection of creativity and arts and the work I do. I've always believed that creativity must be honed. The creative skills of even the most vulnerable women with disabilities, men with disabilities must be honed. So sometime back I started something called the Global Ability Photography Challenge. Okay, this is to train youth with disabilities at the grassroots, army people who've got injured, to teach them photography, and then the challenge is thrown open globally. I did it all alone because my team is busy doing other things. We have 320 people, but everyone is busy skilling and doing other things. Last year, the UN and UNESCO asked me if I can take them as partners on board. So we had the event at the UNESCO office. So I thought, ये साल मैं अच्छा award बनाऊंगी. I asked who is the best designer in the country. They said Michael Foley. When he heard the story, he said, मैं free करूंगी. I wanted to curate it. I didn't know any curator in Delhi. मैं तो हैदराबाद से हूँ. So someone gave me the number of someone called Devika. They said she's a hotshot. She's the only one who works in Paris. Don't tell I gave you the number. So मैंने उसको phone किया and she said no time. I said give me a time for an elevator pitch. She not only did it free, but she did a super job at the UNESCO office. And then I want to tell you this part. On LinkedIn, I got this post from this 10th grader in Texas. Okay? She said, I've been tracking this, not just art. We collect funds by giving music lessons. We've collected $4,000. Can we give it to you? So we got that. And the event was super. There was a girl with disability who was completely losing her eyesight. And this was the last photograph of hers which she'd ever shoot. And that was a winner. So everyone was teary-eyed, the parents, us. And that's the impact of creativity, arts, social space.
Absolutely. It can definitely help a lot in building your self-esteem, in building the confidence in you that you and your voice matters, isn't it? बबीता जी, आप उत्तर प्रदेश की स्टेट विमेंस कमीशन में हैं और ये देश की मोस्ट पॉपुलर स्टेट है. सबसे ज्यादा बात होती है न्यूज में भी उत्तर प्रदेश की और बहुत सारे चेंजेस की भी बात हो रही है आजकल पिछले 5 सालों से. आप मुझे बताइए कि यूपी स्टेट कमीशन ने जब से आप उनके साथ हैं, किन चीजों की शुरुआत करी है, कौन से इनिशिएटिव्स लिए हैं, जिससे आपका जो एक्सपीरियंस रहा है कि महिलाओं को क्या चाहिए धरातल पे, वो आपने कुछ करने की कोशिश करी है?
देखिए, मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगी, जैसा आपने कहा कि बहुत पॉपुलेशन है, तो निश्चित रूप से क्योंकि भारत का एक सबसे बड़ा स्टेट है और जहां अगर पॉपुलेशन की बात की जाए तो 25 करोड़ की इस वक्त आबादी है, जिसमें 12.5 करोड़ की आबादी महिलाओं की है। तो मैं ये कहना चाहूंगी कि जब मैंने इसको संभाला था कमीशन को, तब मुझे लगभग 1 लाख से भी ज्यादा केसेस पेंडिंग मिले थे।
1 लाख से
भी ज्यादा, क्योंकि उसका रीजन था क्योंकि 2-2.5 साल से लगभग कमीशन का कोई गठन नहीं था। तो निश्चित रूप से क्योंकि बड़ा स्टेट है तो बड़ी प्रॉब्लम्स भी हैं, और क्योंकि आज महिलाओं की अगर बात की जाए तो हर फील्ड में वो काम कर रही हैं, तो इसलिए हर फील्ड से ही प्रॉब्लम्स आती हैं।
तो ऐसा नहीं है कि जो महिलाएं काम नहीं कर रही हैं उन्हीं की प्रॉब्लम्स आती हैं, अब आपको उनकी भी प्रॉब्लम्स आती हैं जो वर्क प्लेस में हैं।
चलिए, बीच में मैं थोड़ा सा ये बताती हूँ आपको कि मुझे भी अपने ऊपर थोड़ा प्राउड फील करती हूँ मैं कि इतने बड़े स्टेट की कमीशन की चेयरमैन होने के बावजूद जो कमीशन एक थोड़ा सा आप समझ सकते हो कि थोड़ा एक हाई स्टैंडर्ड होने की वजह से एक बड़े बड़े लोगों में एक प्रचलित था कि भाई एक महिला आयोग है और वहां अगर महिलाएं जाएंगी तो उनकी समस्याएं सुनी जाएंगी। लेकिन आज मैं कह सकती हूं कि जो घर में काम करने वाली महिलाएं, उनको भी ये पता है कि अगर हम महिला आयोग जाएंगे तो हमारे साथ न्याय होगा। तो आज उस लेवल की कार्रवाई मेरे यहाँ हो रही है। इसकी वजह यह है क्योंकि शायद मेरी जो कार्यशैली है वो इस तरह की रही। और आपने जो कहा कि क्योंकि जैसा आपका क्वेश्चन था कि मैंने ऐसा क्या सोचा लोगों के बारे में, तो देखिए क्या है कि महिलाओं में जैसा हम सब जानते हैं कि बहुत काबिलियत है, बस उनको एक प्लेटफॉर्म की जरूरत है। जैसे मैं अगर अपनी भी बात करूं तो मैं कह सकती हूं कि लायंस क्लब एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म भी मुझे मिला था कि जिसको मुझे इतना बड़ा प्रदेश संभालने में मुझे बहुत आसानी हुई, राइट। तो क्योंकि मुझे मौका मिला, तो मैं जैसे महिलाएं हैं उनको करने का उनमें जज्बा है, पर उन्हें समझ नहीं आता कि उनको किधर जाना चाहिए, उनको कहां से क्या कैसे प्लेटफॉर्म मिलेगा, राइट। तो मेरा जो सोचना है, क्योंकि बहुत सारी आबादी है जैसा आपको पता है, और महिलाओं को अभी वो फील्ड तो नहीं मिल पा रहा है जिसके काबिल वो हैं। पर इसके लिए मैं कहना चाहूंगी जरूर कि अब जो सरकारों की अगर बात की जाए, चाहे वो केंद्र में है, चाहे वो अगर उत्तर प्रदेश सरकार की बात करूंगी मैं, क्योंकि थोड़ा पॉलिटिकल हूं तो बात तो करूंगी, तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि वहां का जो अब एनवायरमेंट है वो महिलाओं के लिए पूरा उनको सपोर्ट करने वाला एनवायरमेंट है। तो मैं ये बताना चाहूंगी कि जब मैं इसमें आयोग में आई थी तो मुझे बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी थी, क्योंकि रोज केस ऐसे आते हैं मेरे पास जो महिलाओं से जुड़े होते हैं, तो उसमें बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी थी कि जिसको जो बेसिक चीजें थी देखने में छोटी लगती थी लेकिन कभी गौर नहीं किया गया। और मैं आपको कह सकती हूँ कि जो मैं जब यहाँ आई थी तो मैंने कुछ निर्णय ऐसे लिए थे जो फर्स्ट टाइम थे मेरे, शायद 2 या 3 महीने के बाद ही, कि जिसको आप लोगों ने भी बहुत अप्रिशिएट किया और बहुत दिन तक, मुझे लगता है लगभग हफ्ते 10 दिन तक उसको मीडिया ने कवर किया। तो उसमें था जैसे जिम का था, मेरा बुटीक था, पार्लर था, ये था। तो मेरा मानना ये था, मैं शॉर्ट में आपको बताऊंगी क्योंकि लॉन्ग में तो बहुत बड़ा हो जाएगा, क्योंकि मेरा मानना ये था, इस तरह के 10 पॉइंट थे कि जब हम महिलाओं को आत्मनिर्भर बनाने की बात करते हैं, और ये इनको बिजनेस देने वाली भी महिलाएं, आज चाहे जिम भी हैं, चाहे वो पार्लर हैं, बुटीक हैं, तो यहाँ ज्यादातर कस्टमर जितनी भी हैं, मुझे लगता है कि जिम जैसी जगह की भी बात करें तो 80 और 70% महिलाएं होती हैं, लड़कियां महिलाएं होती हैं। तो वहां भी, लेकिन आपको कहीं भी ऐसा नहीं लगेगा कि वहां कहीं महिला जॉब कर रही हैं, लड़कियां या जॉब कर रही हैं। लड़कियां या तो होंगी तो वो रिसेप्शन पे होंगी या वो पानी वानी पिलाने का काम कर रही होंगी। यही हाल बुटीक का था, या ये हम पार्लर की बात कर सकते हैं, जो बड़े बड़े पार्लर हैं उनमें भी, जिसमें सैलरी भी अच्छी होती है। तो मैंने जब ये कहा था कि मैं चाहती हूं कि जहां महिला अगर कस्टमर है तो वहां महिलाओं को जॉब जरूर मिलना चाहिए, है ना, कि महिलाओं के यूज हम वहां भी कर लेते हैं कई बार अपनी जरूरतों के हिसाब से, कि जहां महिलाओं का काम नहीं है लेकिन वहां भी महिला काम कर रही है, लेकिन जहां महिलाओं का काम है और वहां महिलाएं नहीं पहुंच पा रही हैं। तो इसका मेरे 2 उद्देश्य थे। एक तो महिलाओं की सुरक्षा की दृष्टि से भी, क्योंकि इससे रिलेटेड भी मेरे पास बहुत केस आते थे। दूसरा ये था भी कि महिलाओं को रोजगार की भी एक संभावनाएं बहुत बढ़ जाती हैं, क्योंकि आजकल ये आपने देखा है कि अगर दिल्ली जैसे शहर की बात करूं तो हजारों की तादाद में जिम और ये सारी चीजें हैं। तो मैं कहती हूँ अगर एक महिला भी वहां होगी तो इंडिपेंडेंट बनेगी, उतनी महिलाओं को रोजगार मिलेगा, तो क्या बुराई है। तो ये कुछ ऐसी चीजें थी। तो मेरा जो उद्देश्य है वो यही है कि मैं महिलाओं को कैसे मुख्य धारा में जोड़ सकती हूँ। मेरा कहना हमेशा ये रहता है कि जो अप्रोचेबल है, जो महिलाएं पढ़ी लिखी हैं, जो उनको पता है कि हमें अपनी अप्रोच कहाँ लगानी है, तो उन तक अप्रोच वाले भी पहुंच जाते हैं और वो अप्रोच जहां उनको करनी होती है वो वहां भी राइट जगह पहुंच जाती है। लेकिन जिनको ये समझ तो है कि हमें अपने अधिकारों के बारे में भी जानना है, या हमें इस चीज की, इसको अपनी बात को वहां रखना है, लेकिन उनके पास सुविधाएं नहीं होती। और सुविधाएं नहीं होती, इसीलिए हम कह सकते हैं ये वाली जो कैटेगरी है ये बहुत लंबी है, बहुत बड़ी तादाद में है। तो मेरा सिर्फ यही रहता है कि मैं वहां तक, उन लोगों तक पहुंचूं कि जहां तक कोई नहीं पहुंच पाता है, और उन लोगों को आगे लेके आऊं, क्योंकि मुझे पता है कि अगर सचमुच में शक्ति की बात की जाए तो वहां शक्ति है और वो कुछ भी कर सकती है अगर उनको अच्छा प्लेटफॉर्म मिले।
Before I go across to Richa, because आप Women State Commission में काम करते हैं, मीडिया में सबसे ज्यादा सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट या इससे रिलेटेड विमेन हरासमेंट की केसेस बहुत ज्यादा आते हैं। उन केसेस को कैसे कम किया जाए? मतलब ये जो एक पर्टिकुलर क्राइम अगेंस्ट विमेन की जो प्रॉब्लम है हमारी सोसाइटी में, जो सबसे ज्यादा शायद महिलाओं को उसका डर रहता है कि अगर वो अपने घर से बाहर निकले या घर में भी, उससे बहुत मेंटल स्कारिंग हो जाती है, उनसे उनके करियर भी खत्म हो जाते हैं कभी कभी। ये जो शोषण की जो प्रॉब्लम है, स्पेसिफिकली सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट की प्रॉब्लम, इसको कैसे एज अ सोसाइटी हम डील करें?
बिल्कुल, देखिए वैसे तो मैं आपको बताना चाहूंगी कि अगर पिछले 5 साल के आंकड़े आप देखेंगे तो दिन पर दिन वो कम होते जा रहे हैं। अब ऐसा नहीं है, क्योंकि ये है कि अब थोड़ा जागरूक है महिलाएं तो बता पाती हैं, लेकिन इसके लिए भी बहुत सारी चीजें ऐसी हैं कि जैसे जहां काम करती हैं महिलाएं, तो जैसे फैक्ट्री है या ऑफिस है या कुछ भी है, मतलब मैं आपको ये अपने वुमेन कमीशन की बातें बता रही हूँ कि जहां उन्होंने एक आपको भी पता होगा ये तो, कि और आपके यहाँ भी शायद होगा कि वहां एक सोसाइटी बनाई जाती है, तो जिसमें 10 लोगों को नामित किया जाता है। बनाई तो वो पहले से जाती है, लेकिन कभी इन चीजों पे गौर ही नहीं किया गया। तो अभी जो हमारी तरफ से यहाँ से हुआ तो हम उसको जाते हैं, क्योंकि हम जहाँ कहीं भी जाती हूँ मैं सुनवाई पे, मैं या मेरी टीम, तो वहाँ एक निरीक्षण भी हम लोग करते हैं। तो उसमें जैसे वो जो सोसाइटी है उनकी, उसको कंफर्म करना कि उसमें जितने भी लोग हैं वो 10 मेंबर्स की होती है और उनके क्या क्या काम है वहाँ, क्योंकि जनरली लोग एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ना लेनी पड़े तो इसलिए वो उसको नहीं वो करते हैं। अच्छा, दूसरा एक मेरा ये था कि एक जो एक प्रॉब्लम्स के लिए कुछ ना कुछ ऐसा बॉक्स रखना चाहिए जिसमें महिलाएं अपनी चीजों को डालें। तो जब ऐसी चीजें होती हैं तो मुझे लगता है कि वहां फिर एक जागरूकता आती है महिलाओं में, और ये जागरूकता मैं नोट भी कर रही हूं कि अब उस तरह की प्रॉब्लम नहीं है जो कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स मैंने आते आते फेस की थी। अब उन प्रॉब्लम्स में भी बहुत सारी कमियां हैं। और दूसरा एक जो सबसे बड़ी चीज है कि अभी थोड़ा सा महिलाओं को अपने अधिकारों के बारे में जानकारी नहीं है, क्योंकि जिनके इतने सारे राइट्स हैं कि मुझे लगता है कि अगर जिस दिन वो जान जाएंगी उस दिन जो हरेसमेंट होता है या ये ऐसे कुछ चीजें होती हैं वो शायद ना के बराबर रह जाएंगी।
है ना? So you're saying that more awareness is the key. If women knew more about what they should expect, not just in their houses but also in their workplaces, and knew where to go when they are facing a challenge, then that automatically, solves half the problem, because I think women face a lot of problems in just voicing their issues, not just opinions, but also if they're facing an issue. But Richa, she deals with cases of actual, harassment or crimes. Meera ji is helping disabled. You're helping in the field of art and also artisans. These are not really fields we think of when we think of women empowerment, or we think of the economy, for example, when we think of breaking barriers or building Bharat. So you share your experience of how the work that you do actually shapes the economy on the ground.
So Shivani, what we have seen again and again is at multiple levels, it's the women who do work back home, but they're really not appreciated. जैसे artisans जो घर पे काम करते हैं, their husbands, their sons, their fathers, they bring the product and give it at the stores. So it's actually the women who are doing work who really need to be appreciated for the input that they are put in. I also would differ here, saying that there is one amount of submissiveness that women feel at multiple levels because they feel they don't have the confidence to go and talk. I think we have seen it again and again with senior voices. Younger voices are a little bolder now because they're probably a little more exposed to the urban culture. They see that there is a safe place to go and talk, or the whole concept of community building is a little stronger, where women talk to each other a little more easily about things that are not right. जो पहले एक जनरेशन में था ना कि घर पे कुछ ठीक नहीं हुआ है या आपके साथ कुछ ठीक नहीं हुआ है, उसके बारे में बात मत करो, सब आपको बदनाम करेंगे. That whole concept has changed now, where younger girls, because of support groups, because of the policies that are coming out within the industry, within in our country, internationally also. Women now know that there is a safe space where they can go. There are organizations, जैसे आपके organizations हैं, and who are there with a very strong voice, who are available and who are doing genuine groundwork. It's not, so I think it's more about being supportive of each other. It's more about collaborative efforts and also taking ownership of what you are doing, not doing the work and letting someone else take the credit. I think that's...
So how do you promote that? How do you promote that in female artisans, that, you know, they should be the face of the product and not just somebody who can take it to the shop?
It's a challenge. It's a challenge, really. But again, what we have done at multiple levels in the city, in Calcutta, is we invite the artisans to come and create their product at the center, hands-on. So they are talking their language, they are explaining what they do, they are explaining their kala. Indian kala, Indian artisans are all story-based. उन लोग जब कुछ बनाते हैं ना, साथ में उसके साथ एक गाना भी गाते हैं, which is talking about the long-term legacy. That whole narrative was changing and people were becoming very functional or very commercial, again because of the gap between the urban and the rural population. So bringing these people out and saying, खाली आप और हम अलग भाषा बोल रहे हैं, आपका कला के लिए आपको ला रहे हैं, so you're the hero over here. I think just empowering them, even one person in one village goes back with the story, and then you have 10 more coming. So it's more of a ripple effect. It's not like wanting to create a tsunami at one go. You create a ripple and wait for it to grow, because these people have been shirked or cheated at many levels by many people, many intermediaries who have come in. What we need to do is really rebuild their confidence on us and say, we want to do genuine work. We believe in your work.
Do the women get the money today of the work that they're doing more than they used to get, their fair share?
I think so. I think a lot of us are very conscious about that. And I mean, the fashion industry has taken a complete U-turn, I think, going back to the artisanal. I hear a lot of it, even with the architects, that they send their interns into the villages to understand the pain that goes into creating a craft. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not easy. It's not sasta. And one thing which I think all of us have to understand, when we travel internationally, we pick up something from the rasta over there and then we sajao it in our homes right in front, saying this is from that trip. Whereas when you pick something up from within the country, within the city, you take it home and then you give it to your buyer and say, देखो हम वहाँ से लेके आए थे, ठीक ठाक है तुम ले जाओ. We need to change our narrative. We need to understand and appreciate ourselves a little more. And I think, again, it's about creating that ripple effect. My team is 90% women, and I wanted to get in peons also, women, and my HR put a hard stop. They said, that's not okay. In fact, one of our colleagues, my director, her son came in, he asked me, he said, Auntie, is it even legal to have only women on your team? So I think it's just about empowering each other and strengthening each other, appreciating what we have above everything.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the work that all of you are doing. Meeraji, I want you to share the challenges that you're facing. I mean, already in India, the biggest challenge that we keep talking about when it comes to our economy is, one, having more women in the workforce, because we can't succeed without an entire half of our population. And the second is skilling. We keep talking about that there's a massive skill gap. You cater to a particular section of society, but they can also obviously contribute so much as far as skilled work is concerned. But what is the biggest challenge that you face today? The biggest challenge in skilling with the disabled or the specially abled? And what do you think India needs more of?
I think the biggest challenge we face is mindsets. Okay, it's not because they have negative mindsets, but a lot of it is ignorance. But I think most of these challenges, it's a journey, step by step, you overcome them. So I'll give you a good example of COVID, which was an adversity. We had helplines set up, and our helplines were jammed with calls from women with disabilities. Okay, they were saying, hey, you're looking at the men, but you're not looking at young women, and we also want money in our pocket. in these hard times. Okay. So we talked to them, asked them what do they want. They wanted to do their housework in the morning and lessons in the afternoon. Okay. The biggest supporter for us were mothers. Okay. Because when they heard that these were trainings which were job linked, all of them supported us. So word of mouth of mothers, again women, became the biggest support for us. McKinsey did a pro bono, review of our women batches. Women with disabilities have the least education, they have the least employment, every indicator they trail, okay? And every single indicator was an improvement. Whether you look at education of the siblings, whether you look at health, whether you look at a reduction of sexual exploitation, whether you look at a greater voice in family and financial decision making. And the best was, every woman with disability who was empowered was willing to help and mentor others, unlike others. So I think the issue for us is that women is such a large term, but in that there are women with disabilities, there are single mothers, there are women migrants. So how do we pull all of them when we pull gender, madam, into the policy, into, our thinking? So I think this core vulnerability is in an area where we've started working for the global south. And that I think is extremely important, that as people make policies for gender, we need to look at all these other stream women artisans and pull them all together so that we all, move forward together.
Absolutely. Not just gender, but also your particular background needs to be looked into, because we're all different people. We may be women, we may be men, but we're all individuals, right? So an avenue for that is really important. But I'll take off from what Meeraji said, that the reason why skilling women, enabling women, helping women is really important is because when one woman gets helped, women have the tendency, and this is no disrespect to men, women have a tendency to go on and help 10 others. And which is why, if you help one woman, you're basically making that change in society, which is why they will be change makers when we are not around. Thank you so much, lovely ladies, for joining us. Big thank you to all of you for joining us, and a big thank you to our audiences as well. Can we please have a big round of applause for the change makers on our dance?
A big thank you to our incredible panelists for showing us what it truly means to turn passion into purpose and ideas into impact. And a big thank you to Shivani too. It's time to turn our attention to a discussion that resonates with everyone, shaping our daily choices and the larger narrative of India's progress. As citizens, consumers, creators and contributors, we are all stakeholders in a new India, where rights and responsibilities are evolving and where innovative leadership transforms experience behind the scenes. And to take us through this journey of these extraordinary women leading change across government, business and even the sector of defense, let's welcome Shireen Bhan. Also, please join me in welcoming Mugdha Sinha, who is an IAS, Managing Director at the ITDC, and Colonel Priyanka Singh of the Indian Army. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome them with a huge round of applause.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What an absolute pleasure it is to be back here for the third edition of Shakti with a wonderful set of guests to start our conversations with this morning. There's a lot of universality in what you heard our previous speakers talk about, and we were discussing just that mindset and the need for mindset change being one of them. And I think that is something that there is consensus on, that we need to do a far better job of. But my guests today are path breakers, are trailblazers in their own right. We've already found some
some common threads between us. All three of us have a connection with the Indian Armed Forces. My father was in the Indian Air Force, as was Mugdha's father, was also in the Indian Air Force. And Priyanka is now a third generation Indian Army officer. She's had her entire family play their part for the Indian Army, and of course is also married to an army officer at this point in time. And for the benefit of all of you who probably are Googling her at this point in time, let me help you with that. In recognition of her distinguished services, she's been twice awarded the Army Commander's Commendation Card. So that is Colonel Priyanka Singh. And I was telling Mugdha, she spent the last 26 years in the civil services, and you know, there's a lot of critique and criticism that happens when we talk about the Indian bureaucracy, but the Indian bureaucracy also wields the pen, and very often the pen can have a very, very direct and meaningful impact, and she's kind of been leading that change in different aspects of her career. She's taken on the sand mafia, she's taken on the mafia of different kinds, and a headline captured her journey, which said an officer who's been transferred 13 times in 15 years. So Mugdha, thank you very, very much for joining us here. Colonel Singh, let me start by asking you, you know, for you, it was almost as if this is something that's been passed on from one generation to the next. So it wasn't even as much of a choice that you had to make. You believed that the Indian Armed Forces were truly your calling.
Good morning to everybody. Jai Hind. And firstly, I'm so humbled and proud to be addressing this August gathering. I would like to thank the Indian Army, the organization I serve with great pride. I would like to thank News 18 for giving me this opportunity. So coming back to your question, yes, Indian Army was undoubtedly my choice, the first choice and the only choice. I belong to a family where the blood is not red, it's olive green. So I'm a third generation officer with my father, grandfather, both being from 18 Cavalry, having seen the 71 war, the Independence War, the Burma campaign. So for me, there was no other place, there was no other color I could identify with. So I've grown up with my parents, seeing them in this olive green uniform, traveling length and breadth of the country. So I think I was so immersed and so enthralled by this profession, I would say passion of my father, that I had no other better choice to make. And here I am in front of you feeling accomplished. There was another thought that always ran through my mind, that I wanted, before my father hung his boots, I must wear the uniform. And it was in 2003 when my father retired, and 2003 I joined the forces. So that's my story.
Well, what a fabulous story that is, Colonel Singh, and what a proud moment it must have been for your father as he was stepping out of uniform, for you to be donning uniform. I mean, that must have been such a special moment.
Absolutely.
And I will come to you now with what you're currently doing. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about supply chain resilience in the context of a Trump world, in the context of COVID. Supply chain management, supply chain resilience has become the buzzword. But what Colonel Singh is actually doing is managing supply chain for the Indian Army. She's making sure that 5,000 troops in the northern sector get uninterrupted supply and keep our borders safe. So she is commanding that battalion at this point in time. What has been the hardest aspect of this tenure so far?
So I think as long as the stars are shining bright on your shoulder, brighter than the ones in the sky, so there's nothing challenging. But notwithstanding, I will still quote something. So when I was given the command of my unit, I was addressing my troops, and I had almost 500 boys in front of me, all staring and looking at me, waiting for something to come up, waiting with some expectations. So that was the time I think it threw a very big challenge for me as to how am I going to live up to their expectations. So within a month's time, I think I had this great challenge in front of me when I had to move my battalion to eastern Ladakh. It's a very, very harsh terrain. It's a terrain full of challenge, not only health-wise, but location-wise as well. So that was a very big challenge when I moved my unit almost 1,000 kilometers away, lock, stock and barrel and everything moved out, stayed there for 3 months, delivered my role, came back. And what I found, every man ship shape, medically fit, all equipment fit, and my unit was back in place. So I think that's where I surpassed my challenge, and that was the hallmark of what I had committed to myself. And thereafter there was no stopping, and it's been 2 years of my command, and happily and feel very accomplished when I sit here and talk about it.
Well, what a fabulous 2 years it has been, and I'll talk a little bit more to you in just a second, but let me bring Mugdha Sinha into the conversation. For you, the choice to join the Indian Administrative Services was made by your mother, not by you. When you were all of 5, she decided that the IAS was going to be your calling, and that is how it worked out.
That's right. So they say no when you articulate your desire into the universe, then the universe conspires and ensures that you achieve it. So thank you. It's so nice to hear Colonel Priyanka speak about her experience. So yes, there was a time in my life because my maternal grandfather wanted my mother to be an IAS officer, but he passed away while my mother was just about to take her 10th board exams. And so I think somewhere that that dream in my mother's mind remained, and she thought I was a fit candidate to be groomed into becoming an IAS officer. See, taking the exam in the UPSC does not make you an officer. An officer has to become. And I think the grooming from a childhood, and it doesn't just apply to the UPSC, it could also apply in Priyanka's case. Whatever you want to be in life, you have to become that. The exam might just be a step on that journey, but it is who you are becoming. There is some amount of adulting that happens. When I entered the service at about 24 and a half, and who I am today is very different beings. So there are different beings in me at every point in time. And I think it is the becoming that we must always invest in. And I'm very, very glad that I've had this opportunity to be in the service of the nation for the last 26 years now.
Well, the last 26 years have had many dramatic moments as well. And as you rightly said, that, we evolve, and I think women more so. What was it like when you actually started your career, all at the age of 24? What were some of the challenges that you faced then? We talked about mindset and whether mindsets have actually changed. Have they really, truly?
So I think, yes, we heard the last panel people talk about mindset. I, joined the service straight from college, So I was in LSR and then JNU, and I was a frock-wearing college petite.
Frock-wearing?
Yes, college girl. I was into skirts and frocks, and suddenly that adulting happened, and I wore my third time my sari at the interview, and then thereafter turned into a lady after becoming, coming into the IAS. So that transition happened there. But your grooming in the service happens when you start doing your independent assignments. And I'm extremely grateful to my first mentor, and I'll never forget to recognize him, because he was a stalwart in the service, a man of integrity, a man of character, who gave me a lot of opportunity, who actually groomed me, much like my mother who groomed me to be an IAS officer. When I joined the service, he actually groomed me. And when people talk of gender and they talk of how women help women, if you get a woman in the right place, your grooming will happen. But I have found that, there's a good balance. I'm kind of believe in the Buddha's middle path always, and I see that, we have to coexist. The two halves of the world have to coexist. And it is very, very important to understand how men and women can work together. I'll give you one small example from the same gentleman. When I entered the service, and I quote this very often, he was from Haryana. He was a typical Haryanvi officer who was in the IPS before, then joined the IAS. So he got the flavor of both. So one day I asked him, "So what is it to be a civil servant?" And it was not a gendered question, but the answer came in this manner. He said, "Dekh chori, if you are a man, resourceful, outgoing, dynamic." I said, "Oh." And I said, "What is it to be a lady officer?" Because as she said, once you don the uniform, you are just an officer. We don't face challenges which are physical like she does. We face challenges which are more psychological or more of the cranial or the cerebral matter. So then I had to ask him that question. And he said, hardworking, sincere, obedient. I said, "Oh."
So coming from JNU and being slightly argumentative, I could not resist myself and I said, sir, I've been given to understand that I'm hardworking, sincere and obedient and that's why I'm here. I've cleared the exam. But in college, they also made me understand that I was outgoing, resourceful and dynamic. So why can't I be both? So he said, Dekh chori, you want to be a homemaker or a homebreaker? I said, but it's not about homemaking or breaking. Where did home come into the office space? You know, but that was the mindset when I began from a very, very good mentor. You know, I would wear without sleeve salwar kameez and he told me, Dekh chori, agar successful hona hai na, to ye band baaju ki kapde pehno. मैंने कहा सर उदयपुर में तो लोग पूरा बैकलेस पहनते हैं, तनी वाला कपड़ा पहनते हैं, वो तो गांव में भी लोग तनी वाला कपड़ा पहनते हैं. And you are asking me to wear full sleeves. You know, so these are mindsets. And I think the more we create silos in society, you know, talking of emphasizing gender, because it's not just gender, it's gender, class, community, religion, everything. How many divisions will you create? I think we need to coexist and co-collaborate because life is all about teamwork. You know, marriage is teamwork. Office is teamwork. So I believe in getting these civil service and civil society is teamwork. So I think I would want to be the bridge that transcends all these diversities and understands the nuances that are there. And I don't think that only women can help, though I believe in the sisterhood of women. I want women to have each other's back. But I also feel that sometimes, you know, it's people who are secure, comfortable in your own skin, who can do better, whether they are women or whether they are men. So I think what we must do is raise this whole acclimatization and socialization that happens so that as human beings we can help each other. I think we should not see people in who they are. There has been a point, Shireen, when I've had to tell a particular person that please look at my note sheets and not at the way I smile. Okay, to understand the seriousness of the work that I do.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more with you. But, you know, since we're talking about mindset change, and you'll see a chair being brought in because we do have our third guest, the Consumer Affairs Secretary, Nidhi Khare, just joining us. She was called in for a meeting with the Cabinet Secretary, so she's joining us a little later. Nidhi Khare, ladies and gentlemen, please give her a big round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning. And like our other two panelists, she's also spent a large part of the last 20 plus years in the IAS, and of course has just signed an order that this Consumer Protection Authority has signed this morning, and that's probably why she's been kept away and has been delayed. But thank you so much for joining us here. I'll come to you in just a second. But Colonel Singh, you know, we were talking about this need for a mindset change, but we were also talking about mentorship and allyship with men, because that is important, as Mugdha Sinha was pointing out. In the Indian Army, I mean, that's what, you know, you've been surrounded by men, not by women. In fact, the women are few and far between. What has that been like, and how have you dealt with channeling your own energy and spreading the message across that this is a service that other women should consider?
So as far as what ma'am just brought out, that it's a teamwork in the organization. It's not about gender. It's not about men, women. If you see the Indian Army, it's only numerically it's more men. But if you see the work, it's capability, it's togetherness, it's cohesiveness, it's a teamwork that matters. So I would just give you an example of when I just joined the SSB. I was interviewed by the SSB. That system was so methodologically correct that it saw no gender. All it saw was your capability, your officer-like qualities. No male, no female. Coming on to my training, the training methodology is absolutely neutral. And now I talk about having got commissioned into the Indian Army. Since then until date, I think neutrality is the environment in which I grew up. So I first take this opportunity to thank all the men who've helped me grow up and come and sit here. And they are the ones who guided me, who mentored me. So let me tell you, when you're commanding a unit or when you're commanding a body of troops, your men look at you as an individual and not as a lady or a man. They look at you as a person who can guide them, who can lead them by self-example or various other things. So they are looking at a person who has the capability to do that, and not as a person, whether you're a man
join us here again this morning. You know, as we were just discussing, we're talking here in the capital. We're sitting in a wonderful air-conditioned hotel, and we're talking largely to women who come from a certain privilege. We've had the ability to make our choices. That's not the case for a large part of this country still. And that is actually what I want to address with you, because pretty much at the start of your career in the IAS, that's the reality that you had to contend with. That's the reality that you had to cope with. I didn't even know that there was something called Dayan Hatya, and that, you know, it was a reality in India's recent history, and that is what you were up against. What was that like for you?
So while I agree with my co-speakers here that the services, even the civil services, has never made any distinction between, who you are, and even the people, where we have served largely were men only. But since I have served in both Bihar and Jharkhand, there also you were taken up more as a professional and as a good leader, as a good executor, and not so much about the gender. However, the reality is definitely for a large part of society has been such that, there were some cases of this Dayan Hatya. And in my early, very, very early, postings, this must be about, I think, 1997 or so, where...
And 1997, ladies and gentlemen, is not very far back. Can you imagine that this was the reality in 1997 in India that a young IAS officer had to deal with?
So I was told that, the place of my posting was very peaceful, but I came to know that occasionally, there were these Dayan Hatya cases which were open and shut, and the police also, they just thought that, it is the village community which perpetuated this crime, and they came with the head of the witch, and along also with some of these weapons which were used to kill her. And therefore, nobody followed up, and therefore it was treated just like a, some kind of an incident. And therefore we thought that why this is injustice towards women, because for very small things like, because people did not have access to health infrastructure, if there was some person who died or was suffering with some disease, it was, some woman who maybe of some low stature or maybe a widow, they were branded as witches. And the worst is, if you are thinking that it was only for tribal society, it was not. It was permeating all societies and all faiths, all religion. And therefore we started with a, mass awareness, because we thought if people are made aware that there is nothing like, some such thing, then probably we can bring down the crime or atrocities against women. And we involved everybody, media, lawyers, politicians, people's representatives, panchayats, everybody, including the community leaders and so on. And therefore from there, I think Bihar became the first state to actually enact prevention of, witch activities, 1999. And thereafter, many other states followed. Yeah. Other states also followed. So this showed the extent of, the problem that was existing, which I thought it was only, localized.
Yeah. But it also shows the extent of the power that you enjoy and what change truly can happen if an officer decides to put their will and their might and exercise the actual powers that they have to try and make change happen, and that was very, very clear. But that's what I want to address with you. From a policy perspective, you were also involved with the DBT, which is the direct benefit transfer program that the government has put in place, which also ensures that, the benefits reach the actual person that deserve the benefits or are entitled to the benefits. That is another example of policy working for people, not people working for policy. So as somebody in the IAS, as you're looking at governance, what have been some of the key lessons that you take away that you believe we need to focus on and prioritize?
So when we started with the direct benefit transfers, that was 2013, and virtually there were hardly any takers because it was considered to be too theoretical, and we were basically targeting, all the beneficiaries who belonged to, poor strata, and therefore they were illiterate, and including, half of them were women whose financial inclusion, wasn't there. I mean, it was very poor. So it was a very, very challenging task, and there were, people who would think this will not work in our country. I mean, these things can only, work in a country which is very, very, wealthy and very tech savvy. Still, we thought that this is very important, that the money or the benefits which are belonging to a beneficiary must reach without, any delay, and the petty corruption that is often associated because of these fat layers of bureaucracy, that should also go. And therefore we thought that we must actually have bank accounts, have it, seeded with Aadhaar, and how we need to do it. It was a very, very gigantic, very, very difficult task actually. And, but I'm very, very happy that, I took that challenge up, and we started designing the process flow, the funds flow, and we came out with such a brilliant work that today nearly every cash benefit, whether it is pension, whether it is scholarship, whether it is entitlements, everything, including, the money from the state governments, all these flow on a DBT platform.
And it is one of the world's largest financial inclusion exercises. So congratulations to Nidhi Khare and many officers like her who've helped take that forward. But Mugdha Sinha, if I could ask you, while we're talking about policy, we're talking about governance architecture, let's also talk a little bit about what it takes to actually be able to move through the rank and file, the rungs of this governance architecture, especially as women. The assumptions are that, you would not face the patriarchal challenges, you would not face the patriarchal roadblocks that are often associated with other sectors, but that may not necessarily be the case. Do you want to share some examples of what it was like for you and how you decided to overcome that?
So I'll give you an example from my SDM days. So Ajmer in Rajasthan was usually typecast as a district for lady officers. I don't know whether, ma'am, in Bihar or Jharkhand also you have districts which are assigned. And when I entered the service, I was told that you will get to have one collectorship for sure, because that the state has to give you. The rest you have to earn on your merit, and it's not happened that women end up doing more than two. So I said, well, okay. I was in my office, I had a retired Patwari with me, and we used to celebrate the birthdays of the staff. The SDM office doesn't have many people, there are 4 or 5 people, so you work. I stayed there for about 2.5 years, so kind of developed a good rapport with my staff. So in one of these birthday celebrations of the staff, I was just asking them about the other lady officers who had said and what they liked about them, what they liked about me, what they disliked about the others and about me and stuff like that. So in one of these interactions, the retired Patwari who was assisting us, he told me, मैडम देखिए, आदमी जब गुस्सा करते हैं तो हमें बुरा नहीं लगता है, but lot of women when they scold us, when they throw files on us, etc., it hurts us. So I said, why? Because they say that, well, men have a right to be angry because maybe we are not doing something which is right. But when women get angry, the perception that we get is that they don't know their work. That was a eureka moment in my life, because, we don't understand how the society perceives who we are. I've never been a very angry person by nature. I've been a very calm, composed person. But that day I realized that, if I'm ever angry, because there are moments when you have to be angry, my anger will always be deliberate. It will not be something which will which will come from, like within. It will not be a rushed, unthought of anger. So that was one moment in time I realized that this is how people perceive you. I also realized when I grew up later that it helps to be, to alchemize your anger into what you call satire. So I've seen that has worked really nicely. Because if some people are not moving, I'll just say, "Bhai, nariyal foda jaye, kya aapke liye kariye na bhai, kya ho raha?" That would help move things rather than being angry. So these are things that one learned in the service. But I can tell you there are 4 P's that I have faced in my life. Patriarchy, of course, we face in different ways. At a more cruder level, what ma'am has said is probably witchcraft. If you look at the history of witchcraft, and there's nice books on witchcraft, I didn't know that you'd mention this, but I've been doing some readings on witchcraft. You'll realize just pre the Enlightenment, when women knew a lot about science and sorcery and magic, and the men didn't understand that, those women who stood out, became the witches in society, the 3 witches of Macbeth also for that matter. So it also happens in very subtle ways, where you are typecast not as people don't call you a witch or a Dian, but they say that they give you the same kind of reaction without calling you by that name, right? And we faced it. So I think one of the P's is P's of patriarchy that one faces. The other P is a very subtle and a very nuanced way, which I'm sure most of us face, is patronizing. Patriarchy is, we all know patriarchy is all shades of black. But patronizing, when somebody wants to take you under the wing and is also trying to do the same thing but in a more subtle way, is more dangerous because it's got 50 shades of grey in it. And then I think the other P that I also faced is a lot of plagiarism. Just because of a woman, if you have a path-breaking idea which is much in advance of the time, then somebody will just learn from you and use it in meetings and say that, okay, that kind of a thing, that is very, very dangerous, I think, and it happens more with women because you would want to, you have to prove yourself.
Yeah, and we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about our own achievements enough. Yes. We need to change that too.
And also, if you stand in your power, if you believe in who you are authentically, then I think you create ripples and you create ripples across gender. There the sisterhood also falls at times to be able to have your back. So I think a lot of adulting has happened in good ways, I would say, to teach you who you are. Because see, life is your own journey. I mean, I keep saying this, that while the letters in livelihood will be, longer than life, but all your life is your preparation and the livelihood is just a very small part of your life subset. So you have to become who you are for the life that you have. Because while I might retire at 60, I'll still have a life beyond my livelihood.
Absolutely.
And I think the livelihood, by, putting you in touch with people, different kinds of people. In our service, I think the beauty of the service, and I would never want to trade off with anything else, is the kind of diverse sets of people.
Absolutely. And
suddenly you will be meeting one, if I can say, the likes of the Tatas and the Birla, and suddenly you will be meeting people like what ma'am has been mentioning. That range
and diversity,
I think, is the beauty of the service, and that range gives you an experience which I don't think anything could
prepare you for. Absolutely. We're unfortunately out of time, but Ms. Khare, let me get wrap-up comments from you as well as Colonel Singh. The 3 things that you would like to leave this audience that's here with us in the room, as well as those who are watching us on TV and online, the 3 lessons from your life that you would like to leave us with.
No, I would just say that, when empowerment of women is spoken about, it should be not just, where I have reached. It is actually how much I have empowered other women, whether they were your colleagues, whether they were people who needed your help, your guidance, and so on. So I think, and then, self-belief that you can do this. challenge yourself every day, and then try to see, okay, what is the next, so-called glass ceiling which has to be broken.
To breaking many, many more glass ceilings. Colonel Singh, the final comments with you.
Yeah, so my final message to everyone is, I think you need to break the self-doubt. The day you break the self-doubt, you've broken the barriers, you've broken the glass ceiling. So that's the summing up line. And I'm just reminded of a small quote which I'd like to share. If you know your job well, if you have the professional competence, if you have the professional knowledge, you know your job well, and the people you command know that you know your job well, I think you've done your job.
Absolutely. Here's to angry women, here's to happy women, and here's to empowered women. Here's to women who know their worth and are not afraid to speak for themselves and to speak up for other women as well. Colonel Priyanka Singh, Mugdha Sinha, Nidhi Khare, thank you so much for joining us here. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our change makers here this afternoon. Appreciate your time.
Keep that applause going, ladies and gentlemen, for this very powerful conversation. Thank you, Nidhi ji, Mugdha ji, and Colonel Priyanka for that very enlightening, resilient conversation. Thank you, Shireen, as well. All right. I'm sure you'll all agree that this was a confidence-building conversation as well, one that has instilled us with a new lease of hope. Up next, we present two extraordinary women who have each carved out remarkable journeys of influence and inspiration while sharing their lives with some of the nation's most prominent leaders. Both have built dynamic careers fueled by vision and passion. One leads a top media enterprise while the other dedicates herself to education and social impact. To take us through this inspiring journey of visionary leadership and impact, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shweta Punj. And now, it is also our privilege to invite on stage Rinki Bhuyan Sharma, who is the chairperson and MD at Pride East Entertainments, Sangeeta Saxena, who is an educationist and social worker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome them with a huge round of applause. Shweta, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Can we have a huge round of applause, please, for these wonderful ladies? When we think of power couples, we mostly talk about or look at the powerful men in that dynamic. But today we are talking to two powerful women who have carved a niche for themselves, who represent the Shakti in the power couple dynamic, who are power centers within themselves. They've lent their powerful voice to causes that they believe in. They show us that life can be lived the way one wants to, regardless of the pulls and pressures that comes with being part of a power couple. Please welcome Rinki Bhuyan Sharma. She is wife of the Chief Minister of Assam, Mr. Himanta Biswa Sarma, and we have the First Lady of Delhi, Mrs. Sangeeta Saxena. Rinki ji, I'll start with you. She's come all the way from Guwahati to be here with us to share her journey. What really intrigues me about her is that she manages 19 businesses. 19. And I was talking to her and she was saying, sometimes I think that, sometimes it gets very tiring and I think maybe I can just, come back home. I come back home at 11 in the night and I feel so tired sometimes. And I'm looking at her, I said, you really don't need to be working like that. But she chooses to, and she says that I love what I do. And she's built these 19 businesses. She runs the largest media network in the Northeast. So Rinki ji, when you married Himanta, Mr. Sarma, you were in college and you came from a business background. Mr. Sarma you met him in college. Your parents were not very keen on this union, right? Can you share with the audiences a little bit about what is it that you thought of when you decided to get into this relationship?
Okay, good afternoon, Shweta. And first of all, thank you for be a part of such a beautiful session of the wives of powerful people. But in this journey, when you were saying, like, I was just going back through my yesteryears. So, in my college days, first of all, when I met Himanta, like, after passing out my 10th, I met him when I was in 11th. At that point of time...
11th grade?
11th grade.
So maybe 17 years old?
Yes.
Gosh.
And at the time, what happened, and since I was, one more thing, I was a state level and a national lawn tennis player.
Wow.
So I represented my state, and at a time when I went to Cotton College, that was one of the best institutions of Assam at that point of time, and I wanted to be a part of that organization, institution. And Himanta was the general secretary of the college, and so when I went for my admissions, so somebody was saying that the GS gives all the sports entry to the college, and I said, okay, fine, let me see who the GS is. So when I saw it, I found a very cute-faced, plumpy boy. So, and then I didn't realize, like, one day he'd be my life partner. So
I wonder if he's watching this.
Yeah. And as like in the Cotton has got a ritual of stage ragging. One of the popular girls, like, I shouldn't say, like, they check on who's a good looking girl, who's this and that, and all the Cotton College Union Society sits in the, and they call. And I was like a fresher, and I was sitting among the group. Then suddenly the GS calls out, the Riniki Muya Sharma, please come on the stage. I was like, okay. Then I said, okay, fine. I heard that you are a tennis player. I said, yeah, I am. Now start playing tennis. I was with a mekla chadar. I said, how can I play? So you play virtually. So my best friend was made to be a net. I was supposed to, and I was like, my tears were rolling down. I said, one day I will show this GS who he is. and after that, then we just continued, and I used to call him a dada. So, and whenever I used to go, he's a GS, I used to, Himanta da, I used to call him. But then life as it takes, then we fell in love, we had kids, but till today, he never said I love you, and I never said I love you too. So that is how, but we still have 2 kids now, and we are happily going in a journey, and which is full of ups and downs.
But your mom still doesn't talk to you because you're married to...
Oh, she hates him.
She hates him?
Yeah, because I come from the first liner industrial family of Assam. My father was an industrialist, and at the time Himanta was a struggling politician. So it was like he was a student, and like a student normally in Assam, like how you come, very simple. He was into studies, and he was and my mom was one sophisticated lady. Oh my God, how can she get married to my daughter? So that was the reaction. And then she said that, go and ask him how he is going to feed you. And then I asked him, like, how are you going to feed me? Then he told me, so go and tell your mom that I'll become the chief minister of Assam one day. And I thought that he's trying to impress me, or he's trying to impress what, or has he gone out of his mind? But that was his vision. So today he is. And that is how he started.
Power of conviction. Mrs. Saxena has been married for 36 years, and we always see her at every state function. She's always there with Mr. Saxena, And it's quite amazing because I was just telling her, I said, you're always there with your husband, whereas in my generation, like, I'm hardly there with my husband. I'm doing my own thing, he's doing his own thing. But so this is something, there's something to learn from here. And Mrs. Saxena has really seen the highs and lows, that come with the political life. So if you could share with our audience a little bit about that, ma'am, the journey and of course the power and the pressure of being the First Lady.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us here with you. It's a privilege and really an honor to be here. You said I'm always by his side. Yes,
or he's always by your side.
No, I am always by his side. And that's because it gives me a real sense of pride to be there with him. It also gives me a real sense of culture. Isn't it in our culture to be by the side of our husbands, wherever they are? Lows or highs, wherever, we are supposed to be there, and I'm always there. But when I'm not there as in a state program or something like that, I want to just come across to people as a very approachable person, very reachable, not to be asking for any official work to get done through me. But yes, their pains I want to share, I want to give them my compassion. I don't meet them wearing that crown of being the First Lady of Delhi. I'm just very genuine with them and very authentic. And our journey together began 36 years ago when he was liaison officer with JK White Cement. And as I was brought up entirely in Surat, that was a big city, as compared to when I got married and went Gotan, where the JK Cement, White Cement plant was there. It was a very small village, and the JKs had just a very small township. But it was all a very nice setup of so many families from various places in the country to come together, and we used to have nice fun, so many festivals to celebrate. The journey of my social work or as being an educator began from there. There were so many children, and there was only just one school that JK had. Today is a very big school. You all have to read about it. It's one of the premium schools in India, a boarding school. But then it was a very small thing. So to collect the children there, to teach them, from being from Gujarat, I taught them Garba. And then we did the Navratri festival. And to teach them, to bring them together and to teach them the value of what they have. There began my journey to bring children to the level that a country today expects from them. To be responsible for the freedom that they have, to be responsible for the environment that they're going to leave behind. So that is how my journey began, from Rajasthan, then to Gujarat, and for the last 10 years in Delhi.
Now to New Delhi. Well, Riniki ji, as wife of the Chief Minister of the state, does that make your job easier to run the 19 businesses that you run? Or are you constantly are you in a tussle with Mr. Sarma, trying to convince him or trying to explain, why is it that you're doing something? Why is it that you're working 12 hours a day or 15 hours a day?
Actually, Sweta, being the wife of a chief minister is itself a very happy moment for me. But the thing is that, the question, or the answer to the question is, it's, first of all, if you have a true politician in your home, and if you have a by-heart entrepreneur in your home, at that point of time, it is two different poles. So and he is a successful politician. And when I come to entrepreneurship, in my journey, so when I meet the big industrialists, for example, when they say that we are doing this, and I keep on wondering how this family has done it in 40 years and they have become this. And how come in 20 years I'm still doing it? It is not that I don't have my head or something like that. I'm succeeding, I'm going, but still I have to be, it is like a Lakshman Rekha that I cannot cross to. Because why? being a politician's wife, what happens immediately? You get surrounded like they think us to be a trophy wife, first of all.
Right. Yeah.
And secondly, when they think like, okay, fine, today she is successful because she is the wife of
But
the
that
chief
is with women, right?
Yes.
The success, the credit of the success is never given to the woman for the
Women.
work that she does.
Yes.
It's either the husband or the father. It's, yeah.
Because just before me, Mrs. Mugdha Sinha, she has spoken, like, we perceive men as they are the karta dhartas of the universe, and women are just to support. Even if they mind a phone, they are not recognized.
That's right. Yes.
And normally when you have got a very big tree over you, the small things takes a trouble in
Absolutely.
growing.
Absolutely.
And the struggle, it's becomes very difficult. So, in sometimes, like, okay, fine, being Himanta Biswa Sarma's wife, it is actually very difficult to be an entrepreneur because everybody thinks, because he's a politician in its sense, he said that, Remy, now since we know that we are all surrounding as the politics goes, and if you see me, like today somebody sees me that, madam, I have seen you in all the news coverage, instead of being happy, you believe me, I get scared because I am depicted for all the wrong reasons. Of being a chief minister's wife, how can you become an entrepreneur? In one of the TV interviews, I told, like, मेरा husband तो women empowerment के लिए he is a champion of the cause, but जब wife करती है, मेरे को तो जूते का माला पहनना पड़ता है, वो भी हर एक size का. Name it, and I have all the sizes in my and that is where the you can say it a beauty, you can say it a irony, you can say it a struggle.
Yes.
That is where it lies. That is what I want to say. Like, it's a moment where you cherish being his wife. Sometimes it's a rope that pulls you back, but that is the struggle and the celebration of being a celebrity's wife. That's what.
I would think that, I would say that he is a celebrity's husband, at least in Guwahati and Assam. Because you're quite a celebrity in your own right.
I am, thank you.
Of course, exactly. So this is the humility, right, that women deal with. We're always living with an imposter syndrome, that, right? We're always fighting that self-doubt. Sangeeta ji, what does power mean for you? You know, at the moment, like you said, that you are accessible, you want people to come and approach you, and the fact is also that people might approach you because they want to get something done. So, you know, where do you draw the line, and what does power signify for you?
Power to me is that license which, you know, gives you the authority, the right to be the change that you want to see in the society. Power should never be to impose power. It should always be to empower others. Or power, in my right, I have no power. I'm only talking about power as
So the
judges.
session is Fabulous Lives of Powerful
No,
Wives,
but I
and she
never-
thinks she has no power.
No, I have no power and I remain very humble as a LG's wife. लेकिन मैं एक चीज को बहुत मानती हूँ कि पावर का कभी नशा नहीं चढ़ना चाहिए, क्योंकि नशा जिस चीज का भी हो बहुत जल्दी उतर जाता है. So a powerful person has to remain humble, approachable, polite, listen to people's voice. दुनिया में बहुत दुख दर्द है, अगर आप भी अपना पावर इम्पोज करने लगे कि तुम कुछ नहीं हो, मैं सब कुछ हूं, मैं सब जानता हूं. It doesn't work like that. So power has to be humbling. For me, that is power. You are powerful only when you're humble. If you're arrogant, you're not powerful. You're
That's a
arrogant.
wonderful, wonderful takeaway, really. Thank you for saying that. Riniki ji, in the power dynamics at home, both of you are very powerful personalities. How does that work out? Who calls the shots at home?
Okay. So, it has gone. Basically, both of us, we are very strong-headed in a sense. So, what we have a very lines defined that I will not enter your assembly, you don't enter my home.
Okay.
So, and it happened with a very interesting story. So, Himanta was a Vastu freak.
Okay.
And I don't believe in Vastu. I need a good house that needs to be very beautiful and it has to have the aesthetics on the right sense. We had a dining table, so I have placed it very aesthetically in one place. In the morning I place it and go to the office, and evening again it turns around in a different place. Again the next day I come in the morning, again in the evening. We had a tussle for 1 month like that. And every day Himanta, he doesn't speak to me, neither I speak to him directly, but we turned the tables. And then after 1 month, we finally came to a conclusion it should be in the middle of the house. So, and both of us, neither of them eat in that dining table, but it is a vast. Then I told them, when you are in the political, so you have all good people coming home. They should have the aesthetics correct. So let me take care of the home front. I will give you a proper, beautiful set. You just come and flaunt that you have done it. So that is what, and that is how we maintain. But actually in this power dynamics, there are a lot of people who tries to ping you from the back. And that is where, if you don't have your head on your shoulder, so that is where the family first the breaking line starts. So in that way we are very clear. So like if anything happens in the house, he will say, go and ask madam. If anything happens politically, I said, I'm the wrong person. We don't, that is how we are. And the best part of it is that if we meet too often, then the house will blast. so that is where we are like, okay.
I think that's wonderful advice. If you meet too often, the house will blast. So, all right, okay, very quickly, I'll say the following and you tell me what comes to your mind. I'll say, Assam.
Beautiful green.
Media.
Redefining.
Redefining.
The society.
Kaziranga.
One horn rhino.
Cotton College.
Nostalgia.
Himanta Viswa Sarma.
Okay, I'm taking time to answer. I don't know. This is something I actually don't know. He's my husband. That's only. That's fine.
Husband?
That's it.
Power.
Influence, inspiration.
Politics.
Politics. Even that's like, and for me, like before marrying Himanta, quote unquote, I was to say it is the last resort of scoundrels, but now, for me, because when he was a lawyer at the time, but now for me, politics, if used in the right way, it adds a very beautiful and a defining meaning, not only to yourself, but to the society to whom you are contributing yourself, your entire life.
Okay. Business.
My blood.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you a few, I'll say a few words and you tell me what comes to your mind. Yes, right here. Delhi.
Majestic city with monuments yet unexplored. There are so many of them. You need to visit all these places.
Rains.
Beautiful if you are sipping a cup of adrak wali chai in your balcony, but very harassing if you are on the roads.
Donald Trump.
Oh. The topic of every dinner table conversation in every household today.
PM Modi.
Unmatched. The country is blessed to have him.
The loudest applause. Rahul Gandhi.
Unmatched again.
And Mr. Saxena.
Mr. Saxena again is a very difficult question, isn't it? In very simple words, he is a very simple man. थोड़ा सा लंबा आंसर दे दूं इस बात का?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल दीजिए.
लेकिन उनके अपने शब्दों में अगर मैं उनको डिस्क्राइब करूं तो उनकी जिंदगी का फलसफा 2-3 उनके पसंदीदा गजलों के शेर हैं जो वो कहते हैं, वो अपने लिए ही पढ़ते हैं और कहते हैं कि ये मुझे डिफाइन करते हैं. पहला वो अपने लिए ये कहते हैं कि जो डूबना है तो इतने सुकून से डूबो
जो डूबना है तो इतने सुकून से डूबो कि आसपास की लहरों को भी पता ना चले। इसे वो ये कहते हैं कि जो काम आपको करना है ना वो कर जाइए, ढोल बाजा तमाशा ना कीजिए। लेट योर वर्क स्पीक फॉर यू एंड डोंट कीप ब्लैबरिंग अबाउट योर वर्क। एक और शेर जो उनका बहुत पसंदीदा है वो है कि हम भी दरिया हैं, हमें अपना हुनर मालूम है, जिस तरफ भी चल पड़ेंगे रास्ता हो जाएगा। आपको शायद लगेगा इसमें तो बड़ी एरोगेंस की बू है, लेकिन नहीं, उनका इसका ट्रांसलेशन ये है कि आई हैव फेथ इन माय एबिलिटी, इन माय कैपेसिटी, इन माय डिटर्मिनेशन एंड डेडिकेशन। कहीं मेरे रास्ते में रोड ब्लॉक भी आएगा, मैं अपना रास्ता बना लूंगा और सही रास्ता बनाऊंगा। वो कहते हैं कि जज्बा दिल अगर मैं चाहूं हर चीज मुकाबिल आ जाए, मंजिल की तरफ 2 गाम चलूं तो सामने मंजिल आ जाए। वो कहते हैं कि चलना तो आप ही को पड़ेगा अपनी मंजिल की तरफ, मंजिल तो चल के आपकी तरफ आने नहीं वाली। सो दिस इज व्हाट ही इज। ये उन्होंने इस चीज को सिर्फ एक गजल की शेर की तरह नहीं पढ़ा, अपने लिए पढ़ते हैं, हर जगह पढ़ते हैं। And that is what he actually is. I've seen him in 36 years. Whatever he set his eyes upon, there were huge challenges. Even as in the day he formed his NGO, I was very scared for him. He was a very junior officer, but he fought big oil companies. He began there with his NGO, and you all must be very aware of the fights that he's taken, and he's won them, but with sincerity, with loyalty, and with absolute humility. So he's been that person to me.
Thank you so much for that. Here we have two different generations of powerful wives. Thank you so much. May you always wear your power as lightly as you do today. Thank you so much. Can we have a huge round of applause for both the wonderful women who came and who were very candid with us. I'm sure it's not easy being in the limelight all the time, and you are always, for whatever they do, not only are they judged, but their partners are also judged. So I think that's a huge burden to carry. Thank you so much, and a big round of applause once again.
Big thank you to Rinki ji and Sangeeta ji for showing us what it truly means to turn passion into purpose and ideas into impact. And thank you to you too, Shweta. It was a pleasure having you here. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now be breaking for lunch. Please join us at 2 p.m. sharp as we continue with these insightful and inspiring conversations. Hope you're having a good time and enjoy your lunch.